Welcome to the Behavior Change Architect podcast, a conversation about innovative and evidence-based behavior change strategies designed to increase well-being. Tune in to listen to thought leaders, industry experts, and innovative scientists discuss hot-button topics surrounding specific behaviors, design, and communication strategies. Host Dr. Carrie Evers takes you on a journey to change the discussion, change perspectives, and ultimately help you change behavior for your clients, populations, and perhaps even yourself.
Welcome to the Behavior Change Architect podcast series on workplace health and well-being. It has been estimated that approximately 50% of Americans receive some form of health benefits through their employer, meaning that employers have a very large stake in improving their employees' health, not only to reduce the cost of healthcare and insurance, but also to maintain a healthy, productive workforce. Recent surveys have found that most organizations who offer health benefits also offer programs to help employees identify and address health risks and unhealthy behaviors. These types of health and wellness promotion programs or well-being programs were offered by 81% of large employers and 53% of small employers. Worksite health and well-being has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's no longer just providing a gym on site or a smoking cessation program. It now covers a wide range of offerings, including weight management, mindfulness, financial well-being, chronic condition management, and they're also delivered through a variety of formats, such as coaching and digital programs, and the inclusion of incentives, among other things. This series of 3 podcasts will discuss with leaders in the field of workplace well-being from a variety of perspectives, and we'll be discussing the current state of the research and practice in the field. And today, I am thrilled to introduce our first guest, Karen Mosely, who is the president and CEO of the Health Enhancement Research Organization, also known as Hero, which is a national think tank dedicated to advancing best practices in workplace health and well-being. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Carrie, for the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, so as I mentioned, the topic of this series of podcasts is workplace well-being, which I know is the focus of Hero. So can you provide a summary of where you view the field being right now?
Sure. I think the best way to really give you that summary is to talk about the process that our organization, led by our board, this year, the board completed our next 3 to 5 year strategic plan, so taking us to 2026. And in that plan, we reaffirmed that Hero as a collaborator, trendsetter, trendspotter, and identified some topics within our research and learning agendas that I think provide a really great summary of where we are right now. Our research agenda is going to be focusing in 4 areas: equity, sustainability, workplace performance, and mental and emotional health. And our learning agenda for next year, again, has 4 topics. We'll be looking at the hybrid workplace and purpose, faith, and spiritual well-being and the role that they play in work and in the workplace. We'll be looking at safety at work, both structural and psychological, and the role of equity. And then our Forum 22 is going to focus on diversity and inclusion in lifestyle medicine and population health, and how the choices we have impact the choices we make.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I love the term you just used, trend spotter. And I really view Hero as one of the leaders in this field in terms of looking forward in terms of where we're going to be in those next 3, 4, 5 years. So I'm thrilled to hear about that plan. You just mentioned something in terms of remote work. And I'm wondering, do you see that as one of the biggest challenges employers have had in 2021?
I do think so. I mean, I know personally for Hero, it has been a challenge. Hero was a virtual team before COVID. We had a small office that a couple of folks might have gone in every now and then, but our own team is virtual. And we realized in the pandemic that as a virtual workforce, we still relied on opportunities to connect in person throughout the year. And when the pandemic shut down in-person meetings and such, we've not been together as a team since February of 2020. So finding ways to connect and to support a virtual workforce when we are only connecting through a phone or through a Zoom screen or a Zoom room has been a challenge, for us, and I know that it has been for the American companies as a whole.
Absolutely. I think we're all struggling with that a little bit right now, both as employers and as employees. So as you know, the name of this podcast is The Behavior Change Architect. So when you're talking about the work that Hero does, what role does behavior change science play in it? And does this encompass both organizational and individual change?
It does. And, you named it in your lead up to this conversation and what your podcast is all about. When Hero was started 25 years ago, our mission was focused on helping employers to control healthcare costs through supporting individual behavior change through the tobacco cessation and the weight management, the on-site gyms, and other health management programs. But our mission has evolved just as the industry has evolved and as employers are becoming more aware of the impact that organizational support and a culture of health can play on individual employee health and performance. And the organization also has the ability to influence the health of the communities where they do business, their suppliers, their customers, the environment. And that's what we mean at Hero by employer ecosystem. So we talk about Hero connecting science and practice to demonstrate the value of the health and well-being employer ecosystem. So I think that they are interconnected.
I love hearing that about the employer ecosystem and the fact that an employer's role isn't just in terms of where their employees are at, but what role they play in the community. And I think that's going to be going forward, going to be even more of a challenge for employers. What other challenges do you think employers are facing for 2022?
Well, I think we're seeing exactly what's being reported, more generally in the news, what everyone's calling the Great Resignation, and that seems to be tied to purpose, and I think employers are realizing that to be competitive for the talent that is available, that they are going to have to really think about the benefits that are being offered. But, first and foremost, it's burnout and mental health. Everyone is exhausted, and mental health and well-being was a challenge pre-pandemic. It is certainly amplified through the pandemic, and I think is going to be the next real crisis, or the crisis that is already upon us, that will be trying to determine. Hero had forum just last month, and we talked about organizational and individual resilience. And I just think that is something that it's going to take a lot of organizations and a lot of collaboration to figure out how to take care of employees, individuals, the communities to really get through this and have a healthier workforce.
Now, I'm thrilled that you just mentioned the Hero Forum, which is your premier event of the year and really the chance for people working in this field to come together and network and share best practices. So were there any lessons that you learned from the sessions that you listened in on and the discussions that you had?
Lots, too many to name, but I'll name a few of my favorites, Carrie. Thanks for asking. So the theme was about emotional resilience. Like I said, for individuals and organizations, I loved one session that I attended. Amanda Hugelmeyer used the phrase bounce forward. Our theme was called bouncing back, but she talked about bouncing forward and really taking a hard look at what new light has been shed by this syndemic, this combination of COVID and structural racism, and thinking about ways to take care of and supporting our employees' well-being and how to be more inclusive in doing that. So really integrating diversity, equity, inclusion, and well-being strategies. Another, and we mentioned this already, is just the opportunity to identify ways of social connection because of the isolation that so many of us have felt over the last 20 or so months. And then I really appreciated that we were able to bring together speakers and sessions from different disciplines, helping to model how we can break down silos and connect across organizations, which ultimately will lead to greater resilience. And then finally, one topic that I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about whenever I can is social determinants of health. And so the visibility that these determinants of health have received because of the pandemic and the racial discord gives us just the call to action that we need to strive to advance evidence around equity and sustainability, mental and emotional health, and workplace performance.
Absolutely. And social determinants of health has become such a focus for so many of us in the past few years. And I think, as you said, the pandemic has just brought those more to light and also increased their impact on many of our populations. So I was thrilled to hear that that was included in the Hero Forum. Now, if people, you just mentioned some wonderful, wonderful presentations. If people are interested in learning more about the forum, is there someplace they can go, or can they listen to some of those great speakers?
They can, Carrie. The website is forum.hero-health.org, and our on-demand library of all of the sessions that were presented during that week in October, as well as a number of hours of additional pre-recorded on-demand sessions are available. I think I'm right that it's like 65 hours worth of listening that you can do, and if you're looking for credits for CHES or MCHES, that's available also. So you can sign up by going to that website that I mentioned.
Oh, that's wonderful. So for any of the listeners out there that would like to learn a little bit more about this area or kind of get more up to date on some of the current research and practice, that's a great resource for everybody. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about one of the other major aspects of Hero, and that's the Hero Scorecard. And I'm sure some of my listeners haven't necessarily heard about this. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and how this may help some organizations?
Absolutely. Thanks, Carrie. So the Hero Health and Wellbeing Best Practices Scorecard, in collaboration with Mercer, that's the full name, was designed to help organizations learn about best practices for promoting workplace health and well-being, and to discover opportunities to improve and measure their progress over time. It was developed with a number of thought leaders and validated, and has been an instrument that now in its 5th version, we released version 5 in February of this year. And originally developed as an educational tool, we found it useful as a research instrument, but as an educational tool for organizations. Anyone who completes it, it's a publicly available, free access. You get an instant assessment of how your organization's well-being approach stacks up to others in the National Scorecard database. And the additional value, that's a value alone, but many of the participating organizations have found a key benefit of completing the scorecard has been bringing together the health and well-being stakeholders from different departments within their organization to discuss the question responses. And by doing so, that enhances a level of collaboration across departments, as well as identifying new opportunities for integration and improvement. Version 5 that I mentioned that we released in February of this year was developed after, I believe version 4 was released in 2014, so it had been a few years, and there have been a lot of advances and learnings in the field, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion, social determinants of health and community health, mental and emotional well-being. And so those questions have now been incorporated into this new version of the scorecard. So we already now have a data set that we can begin doing benchmark reports off of this new version 5 data, and I'm sure it won't be long before we're able to identify research questions and research studies that would benefit from taking a closer look at the data like we've done with previous versions.
So in terms of with the Hero Scorecard, if you received a phone call from, say, a new chief wellness officer at a large employer, and they ask for your advice on how to make the biggest impact in their organization, what would you tell them as a first step? Would it be the Hero Scorecard, or there are other things that you would recommend to them?
For sure, it would be the Hero Scorecard. That would be first and foremost. And I would encourage them to join Hero. the benefits of being a member of Hero is networking with other organizations, maybe like you, or organizations that you would want to partner with to provide a comprehensive approach for your employee well-being. But you also get a front row seat on future trends, like I mentioned. We're trend spotters, and so I'd encourage that as well. But we have a number of resources and research commentaries that are publicly available on the Hero website, in addition to the Hero Scorecard, which I mentioned is free. If there are peer-reviewed research articles that come out around workplace well-being, we will highlight those. We will help organizations to translate that research. So I selfishly would just point them to all the good things that you can find at Hero, Carrie.
That's wonderful. And so, I mean, Hero just has, it sounds like, this incredible network and database about workplace well-being and health and well-being programs, as well as, really connecting with so many of the leaders in the field and being trend spotters. What would you say you've seen the most impactful benefit for an employer to implement a workplace well-being program? What are some of the benefits if I want to convince, my C-suite about something we should do?
I think that with the studies that Hero has published, as well as Ron Getzel and Ray Fabius and others, I think there are now 6 studies that that demonstrate the impact on shareholders, on stock price, of that organizations with high-performing well-being, a comprehensive approach to well-being, the organizational support, all of those pieces, that I would really encourage them to take a look at what those organizations are doing. And one of the studies was specifically looking at high performers on the Hero Scorecard. A comprehensive approach is going to give you a win-win. It's going to take care of your employees. It's going to have happier, healthier employees, and you're also going to be more profitable, more productive, higher performing as a company for your shareholders. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah, I'm thrilled you mentioned the stock price, because that is one of the most fascinating research studies I've seen in this area, in terms of employers who are implementing many of these programs actually see more profitable and better stock prices after they implement these programs, if I'm understanding the study correctly.
Right.
Great. So what do you think are some of the challenges the employees face? We've talked a little bit more about employers, and for the employees, we've mentioned remote work. What are some of the challenges that, as an employee, we're facing that might be a clue or a trend spotter in terms of the types of programs we're going to need in the future?
Yeah, work-life balance is so huge right now, because so much of the workforce took their work home during the pandemic. Not that work-life balance was not a problem pre-pandemic, but I think that the lines have become even more blurred. So work-life balance. Caregiving is also a topic that has come to the forefront again. It was a challenge before, and many employees aren't even aware that their organizations provide caregiving support or caregiving policies, and very few take advantage of them. So I think that organizations are looking at how they can better support the employees. But caregiving, work-life balance, and overall just burnout and exhaustion are what I'm seeing as 3 of the really key topics that we are carrying into 2022, and really need to take a look at how organizational policies can change and shift to better support employees in those areas.
Yeah, so important. And I think many of us wouldn't necessarily have put caregiving at the top of that list, because we've been so focused on COVID and other, current issues going on. But I do see caregiving as one of the biggest drains on emotional well-being and finances and time for so many of our employees. So I'm thrilled that you mentioned that. So as the president and CEO of Hero, you mentioned that you're a small team and you're faced with many of the same challenges as other small businesses. Can you speak a little bit to the small business owners or the employees of small businesses in terms of the Hero Scorecard and how they can offer some of these types of programs or really increase the well-being of their employees, even though they may have fewer resources and time?
Sure. So, one of the things that I talk about in my talks about social determinants of health, I think is can be applied more generally, and it's just simply talking to your employees to find out what's important to them and what they really need. You don't need to assume that they need one program or the other, or one benefit or the other. Talk to them and find out what's important, and where their strengths are and where they might want to contribute. One thing that got some spotlight during the early pandemic and has increased is the presence of or the creation of employee resource groups for organizations. Hero does not have one, but that's just an example of where employees were saying there was a need. It helped to support connection during times of isolation, and it helped to identify where employees had specific passions or strengths to organize groups around special interests like diversity and inclusion. As a small business, you're really dependent and have lots of opportunity to leverage resources within the community and online that are available. And at Hero specifically, we're fortunate to have subject matter experts on our staff. And so we're learning about new resources all the time. We're getting their insights. And one example of what Hero has done for a couple of years, we used the Global Wellness Institute Wellness Moonshot calendar. And so that provided us every month with a well-being topic that we could focus on every month. And it gave us a list of suggested resources and team activities. I'm looking at my Moonshot calendar right now. In October, the topic was move. September, it was renew. So it just helps us to take a step back and look at, specific topics, and again, a free resource. So
can you say the name of that resource again?
Sure. It's through the Global Wellness Institute, and it's called the Wellness Moonshot.
It sounds like you've talked a little bit in terms of social determinants of health, and it sounds like that's a real passion for you. If you, for Hero, were suddenly given, the ability to do your personal passion project for Hero, what might that be?
Well, it would definitely involve an element of collaboration. When I first started with Hero in 2014, managing the grants from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to help employers to understand the business case for investing in the communities where they do business. That's where my passion project would be directed, would be a version 2 of that work or building on the foundation that was created there. And it requires collaboration and participation from every aspect of a community, every stakeholder. And I think that probably just, thinking about the topics that we've already talked about on the podcast, it would focus specifically on supporting mental health and well-being within a community and health equity. And so equitable solutions for mental health and well-being within a community and the employer's role and ability to impact that and support that. That sounds like a really good day to me.
Well, the field is so lucky to have you in this field, and a trend spotter and a leader. I'm curious, do you mind saying a little bit about how you came to be in this position and working with Hero?
Much of my career seems very opportunistic, Carrie, but I'm really happy for the opportunities that I've had. I've always been involved with nonprofit management, specifically in the health area. And then about 15 years ago, I got involved with Population Health Alliance. Then it was named Disease Management Association of America. And through my work at PHA, I was involved in a collaborative research effort between PHA and Hero, the research volunteers from both organizations, to identify a core set of metrics to evaluate what we were calling then employee health management programs. By the time the project was released, we had already evolved the term to health and wellbeing. And so in that work, I became more familiar with Hero and Hero with me. And then, like I said, I came more permanently over to Hero for the 2 grants from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and my role has just evolved from there.
Yeah, and we're all very lucky for that. Hero really is the place to go if you're looking for any information on worksite wellness and health programs, and using resources like the forum, where you have such a fabulous group of speakers and experts in the field, and the scorecard, which is a great resource for people who really want to start taking their organization to the next level or kind of check in on how they're doing. So we really appreciate all of your leadership in that field. And I'm just curious, is there anything you want to leave my listeners with in terms of where you see the field going or your hopes for the future?
I really hope that we do not lose the learnings that we've gained over the last 20 months, and that we're able to really come together and make some significant changes in health equity and mental well-being. And I think that that's possible. I'm seeing a change already just in the conversations and the phone calls and emails that I'm getting. And so I really am optimistic that we are moving into an era that we will be able to create some sustained change from what the past 20 months has taught us, and invite anyone to the table to help us move that along.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm thrilled because you mentioned Ron Getzel. And just for everyone on the podcast, Ron Getzel is going to be our next guest on the Behavior Change Architect podcast. He'll be talking about where we are in some of this research and what are some best practices for workplace health and well-being. But for now, I just want to thank Karen Mosely for being with us here today and providing such great insight and trend spotting and resources for all of our listeners to be able to increase the health and well-being of their employees. So thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you for listening to the Behavior Change Architect podcast. To continue the conversation, visit our website at www.behaviorchangearchitectpodcast.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.